Digital news cycles and market tickers tell a consistent story. India is the world's fastest-growing major economy, currently building the infrastructure to claim its place as a global superpower. Yet, for many citizens, that macroeconomic data doesn't match their bank balance. Despite rising salaries, the actual purchasing power of the average household is lower today than it was 5 years ago. The rupee's historical decline reflects an import-heavy structure, with mathematical projections pointing toward 150 rupee per dollar. This coincides with massive capital concentration in real estate. As investment drives up prices, they detach from wage growth, leaving the middle class fewer paths to ownership. This gap between the data and the lived experience reveals that India's growth is masking structural flaws in how it measures living costs, builds its essential goods, and prices its land. To understand the rising cost of daily life, the current CPI basket uses weights from 2011, representing a decade-old lifestyle. It allocates 46% strictly to food items. This means, in official calculations, the fluctuating price of basic vegetables holds more mathematical weight than a child's school fees. Modern middle-class expenses like diagnostic medical services and specialized healthcare are either drastically undercounted or absent from this 2011 framework. Managing the price of staples like onions is a political necessity for a lower-income demographic of 800 million people. But this narrow focus overlooks the actual cost of living for the working professional. When official reports state that inflation is 5%, they are using a 2011 formula. For the modern middle class, actual primary expenses are growing at double that rate. Standard economic textbooks often claim that a falling currency is a benefit because it makes a country's exports cheaper and more attractive to the rest of the world. But that advantage disappears when a country relies on imports for its foundational needs. India's structure requires a continuous outflow of US dollars just to keep the domestic economy running. Gold is a primary driver of this dollar drain. To satisfy domestic demand, India imports roughly 800 tons of gold annually, while producing only about 1 ton within its own borders. This reliance on external supply chains reaches into the core of India's most successful domestic industries. Even in our pharmaceutical hubs, local factories remain dependent on foreign suppliers. Roughly 70% of the active pharmaceutical ingredients needed to make medicine are imported from China. Agriculture faces the same bottleneck. Local processing plants rely on materials like potash and sulfur from the Middle East and Russia to produce fertilizer. Every essential domestic purchase triggers an outflow of dollars to pay for raw materials. This structurally weakens the rupee, making the next round of imports and the products they create even more expensive for the consumer. This economic friction shapes the final goal for the middle class: shelter. However, new housing supply is almost entirely disconnected from their income levels. Current market data shows that only 12% of new builds qualify as affordable housing. Meanwhile, over half of all new development is focused on luxury homes priced above 1.5 crore. This leads to a massive paradox. While families struggle to find affordable homes, over 2 crore completed luxury units are currently sitting entirely empty. These prices are inflated by capital that has nothing to do with local salaries. The market is increasingly driven by NRI remittances and domestic black money looking for a place to store value. Real estate has transformed into a wealth hoarding vehicle for the ultra-rich, pricing the middle class out of the very cities they are helping to build. The middle class is currently squeezed by a devaluing currency, measured by outdated inflation metrics, and locked out of the housing market by concentrated wealth. Resolving these issues requires building end-to-end local supply chains, democratizing industrial incentives, and adopting economic metrics that reflect the actual expenses of a modern family. If India wants to be a true global superpower, it must move past growth that only looks good on paper. It must build a system where the citizens building the country can actually afford to own a piece of it.